Do you still believe in crypto? Merry Christmas. Frankly, when you look at the market last night, you might as well have still believed in Santa, hoping that he would come and perhaps save you. The market seems to have stabilized, but naturally, the indignity of watching crypto behave like this, with the FOMO going on in equities, in gold, gold and ETFs for stonks are everywhere. It's like, oh my God, I can't believe how wonderful this is. They're probably going to try to get an SPX 7000 printout. Mind-boggling. So for today, we will review 2025 briefly. We will preview 2026 briefly. We will talk about a new report that just came out from Grayscale. So all the crypto research houses are publishing stuff. And you know what? This thing from Grayscale sounds a lot like the stuff that we gave Patreon and the YouTube member area last night. A shockingly sane approach. A lot of places are saying 2026 is too hard to predict. I don't think it's too hard to predict. I think you're going to have insane volatility. I think you're going to have geopolitical events. I think you might even have a Black Swan. And I think the Black Swan, even though it could take down crypto initially, is going to bring crypto screaming back. That's the long and the short of it. We've done, two different kinds of Gann previews. And we've also brought up altcoins, which Grayscale brings up, which, stay tuned for that. We'll see if any of their altcoins match any of our altcoins. Heidi ho. Because everybody's forgotten about crypto in general. No one believes we're in the middle of a tax loss selling vortex, meaning anybody that bought crypto is incentivized to dump it and buy it back at some later date, whether that's, tomorrow or 5 minutes from now. They are incentivized to sell at this juncture, and the lower it goes, ironically, the bigger incentive to sell, because the bigger the tax loss. Hence the nightmare before Christmas last night. I'm like, oh my God, this market the screen is so red, it's like a suntan. Okay. Now there are holiday surprises. The market does love holiday surprises. I have no idea why anybody would sell Bitcoin. Let's begin with silver. Now, yesterday, hanging out with Crypto Princess on her show, we talked all things silver. I actually gave a free Patreon report. So all you have to do is join the Patreon, pay $0 to get the silver report that details what I'm about to explain. Silver and gold have a very important meaning at this point for crypto. Now, the general crypto Twitter rap is that Bitcoin always follows gold. Next tweet, right? I mean, that's just what people say, right? They don't know what the heck it means. Some people are smart enough to say gold is a fear response, and then Bitcoin will go once the central banks respond with massive QE, which is not an unintelligent thesis, especially since Uncle Sugar has to issue $9 trillion in government bonds. And there's already talk of another government shutdown at the end of January, which should be really interesting given a big Gann window for something to happen opening up at the start of February. But anyway, good luck shutting the government down. Now, in these cases where you have all this fear, people are going to want physical delivery of gold and silver. And we all know that there is not enough physical silver or physical gold for everybody who wants to take delivery. And silver is important because silver is also an industrial metal, which is undoubtedly involved in this massive AI data center build-out, which is moving U.S. gross domestic product all by its lonesome. It's like the biggest construction project ever, pretty much. So, how does Bitcoin and silver connect? Why is silver up only? Simple. One day, someone's going to say, I want physical delivery of silver. That'll be probably when silver's at 100. And somebody at an American or European exchange will go, well, you know what? Sorry. And then regulators and exchanges will come in and change the rules and say, well, you know what? If there's no physical silver available, we'll just do what they call cash settlement. In other words, our futures exchange, where you have the choice of whether to get the physical item or not, yeah, it's not a futures exchange anymore. It's kind of like poly market. You know, you bet on the price, and then, you know, we settle up when the contract expires. Cash settled, no physical delivery. Now, you're probably wondering, what does that mean? All right, well, you can't trust a legacy exchange. I'm sure people can't trust a legacy exchange now. I mean, if you can't get delivery of gold or silver, can you get delivery of oil and soybeans? Right? I mean, this COMEX market, you know, the U.S. futures exchange, anybody who can't get silver, it may not necessarily be a bank that blows up, although that can happen, but it's the trust mechanism in the exchanges. Now, the Fed can print its way out of a liquidity problem. In other words, if a bank fails because of a silver or gold delivery problem, well, no problem. No one cares about that. The Fed just comes in and pushes more money in the system, and it's fine. But if there's a trust problem, there's nothing they can do about that. Nothing. Now, of course, what instrument benefits in the event of a trust problem? Anything decentralized, which I'm guessing, frankly, is Bitcoin, Ethereum, Zcash, and Monero. And maybe you can add Solana to that, maybe. But I'm thinking it's Bitcoin, Ethereum, Zcash, and Monero. Boom. And silver is those coins' best friend. Because as soon as silver fails, as soon as there's a failed delivery and no one trusts legacy, you really got to ask yourself, hey, why am I negative crypto again? All right. The year in review. So macro shocks. 1 year ago today, we were so excited. It was the American dawn of crypto. And what it really turned out to be was the Chinese dawn, because they hacked Binance and then they bought gold and ran that higher. And then the crypto market wrecked itself all by its lonesome. Chinese miners sold Bitcoin. Russian miners sold Bitcoin. All the market makers in Asia got liquidated, and we had unrelenting sell pressure, and we had depression that is probably now just as big as the euphoria as last year. Last year, we had the strategic Bitcoin reserve at this time, and now we have literally a failed year. You know, beware the failed rally. This was beware the failed year. And needless to say, confidence in this ecosystem is gone. Now, the 2026 preview. New standards, new rails, new ways of doing business, a new trust system. Old valuation models break. AI is a bubble. Type that into Google. Everyone is typing that into Google. Therefore, it's not going to happen. Forecasting, modeling, optimization, all of the things that all these math guys do to measure everything, it's over. Crypto isn't over. The old way of doing things is over. That's why everybody thinks AI is a bubble. People will think AI is a bubble right up until they have an Optimus robot at the water cooler or an Optimus robot at your charging station. It's going to happen next year. The AI trade gets real very quickly, very quickly. And the only software in the world that cannot be rewritten by some chatbot and deployed is the Bitcoin network. Just saying. So for next year, you're going to have to get abstract. You're going to have to get used to things being decentralized or issuer-less. Like, who issues Bitcoin? Nobody. Wall Street's trying to get involved. Like, oh, yeah, well, we issue a Bitcoin ETF. Okay, buddy, well, You don't issue the future of money. You can't even get the precious metals market under control, right? You could be entering ready for this, a valuation agnostic, meaning I don't care what it's worth. I only care what it does. Now, that can be dangerous. I get it. But there are components of crypto that are so cheap. I don't know why we spend time talking about how expensive stocks are and no time talking about how cheap crypto is. Matter of fact, Grayscale, they must watch our show because there's like, there's a whole bunch of decentralized alternatives to AI as they cannot build the computing power fast enough. They just can't. And even if they do, it's going to get scary and you're going to want a decentralized alternative. Do you think in the precious metals market, if they could have a decentralized alternative to getting physical silver, that they wouldn't be all over that? They're relying on centralized authorities, exchanges, and regulators to make sure they get their silver, and they're probably holding their breath, right? So 2026 will be the year of the abstract, the year of your imagination, which brings in crypto in a very big way. Okay, so let's just get this out of the way. I was wrong about the fourth quarter. We were wrong about the fourth quarter, and the 4-year cycle is over. Let's say it. The 4-year cycle is over. Now, my next comment is, who cares about the 4-year cycle? I don't. The 4-year cycle is definitely over. It's over. Done. Okay? Who cares about the 4-year cycle? I don't. I think crypto, Grayscale said it perfectly. Grayscale is saying crypto and Bitcoin, even though we think, Bitcoin is huge. The whole crypto sector is kind of like a mid-cap stock. It's small compared to everything else. And they're going to allocate money to gold, silver, Bitcoin, and Ethereum. Because really, out of embarrassment, the only way any legacy portfolio manager is going to buy gold and silver, they're going to be like, well, we miss gold and silver. We'll add it to our portfolio, but it's not FOMO because we're going to add crypto too, and crypto's down. Trust me. They're going to add it all. And of course, Uncle Sugar has got to issue $9 trillion in debt. And Grayscale points out that, here is Uncle Sugar's debt trajectory into 2050. That's the share of government debt to GDP. Right now, we borrow a kind of 100% of what we make, and that's going to 150. I think Japan is over 200. Okay, so we're going to sell alternative form of money because a cycle, mathematics that, don't take into account what large players have to do, central bank credibility. In other words, it's amazing that the most important thing in Bitcoin these days is the cycle for when Bitcoin was an altcoin, practically, or just a purely speculative instrument, when the thing that they really should be reading is the Bitcoin white paper and the history of the period it was written in. Because, the next oddball thing is out there. Now, another word on 2025. I actually looked at the charts. I'm going to be publishing them in Patreon. Somebody has compared what happened to Bitcoin to what happens like when a big tech stock IPOs, right? All the people who were there from the beginning, the executives, they can all sell. It's kind of like an ICO too, right? When you have unlocks, right? The first big seller is usually the people inside the project or the VCs, whether it's a stock or whether it's a crypto project. Now, this one person likens it to when Facebook IPO'd back in 2012, a lot of fanfare around that, and Facebook didn't do anything for a year. Absolutely nothing. Went up, went down, and sat there. They maybe had one rally, and then that just fizzled. And Facebook sat there dead for a year. And then one day you woke up and there was an earnings release and it gapped up and it was a breakaway gap and it's been up only ever since. I want to say Meta is now trading at what, like 600? That particular gap in Meta, I think it was at 40. Yeah, the gap was at 26. So again, what happened this year in Bitcoin? Exactly what happened with the stock. Bitcoin whales, after FTX, they got a 10x. They practically got a 10x. And they're like, I'm a billionaire now, and capital gains taxes are reasonable, so see it. I'm taking the money on the physical Bitcoin. I'm selling the physical Bitcoin to Sailor, and I'll sit in the ETF and S&P. I'm done. Okay, just like the people who sold Facebook, you know, like you said, Facebook was a startup, and then it goes public at 32. Well, everyone's like, oh my God, I can't wait to sell. And then when everyone's out after a year, I don't know, it just, it goes on a 15-year run from 24 to 150. And everybody think this can't happen in Bitcoin because 2026 is too hard to call, too close to call. I gotta revise my downside. I gotta revise my upside target. I got to get more realistic. In other words, everyone's getting more realistic when you got to get more abstract, more valuation agnostic, right? You got to get more imaginative. You got to take your forecasting and throw it out the window. And I am proud to say Toby Ward said that at the beginning of last year. She said 2025 was going to be insane. It was not the kind of insane I wanted, but still insane. And all your metrics go out the window. Out the window, right? I mean, can you really look at altcoins and tell me that this price action from this liquidation event, courtesy of whoever took down Binance, whoever it is, actually reflects reality? Can you really tell me that? Do you still believe in crypto? Now, of course, you're like, Bill, I think I would rather believe in Santa. And you know what? I don't blame you. Right up until the point where, Grayscale notes that Bitcoin is basically unchanged or below where it was a year ago. Year over year, it's unchanged. Wow, what a rock and roll cycle that is. Dollar debasement, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Zcash. You know what? If you didn't know what to do, you could do Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Zcash. And if you wanted to get fancy, you could buy Monero. And if you wanted to get wild, you could go get some Matrix from AIntivirus. I got my facial recognition shirt on this morning. Privacy. Galaxy right about this, that, privacy is going to be a $100 billion crypto sector next year, currently at 20. So it's not surprising that Grayscale starts off with dollar debasement, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Zcash. Period. End of story. And then it starts talking about stablecoins, the Genius Act, and undoubtedly the Clarity Act that follows. Because most likely the government is going to do the Clarity Act in exchange for, the left getting whatever social programs that they didn't get the first shutdown. You give us the social programs, we'll give you the Clarity Act, and that's a deal gets done. That's a guess. And then everybody goes, okay, what's the stablecoin trade? Ethereum, Solana, okay, Chainlink. Wow. Okay, no XRP. They have Tron and BNB on the list for stablecoins. It's a little outside the box. Why not? Love it. I mean, layer ones are dead. Everyone's like, it's layer ones. Like, the whole talk was like, okay, all layer ones are going to zero. Every layer one is going to zero. As soon as you hear people start talking about everything in a sector going to zero, it's close to the end. It's close to the end, right? Because everybody, because the tape is red, they have to say something negative. So Arthur Hayes thinks Bitcoin's going to $1 million, but layer ones are going to zero. Galaxy Digital thinks Bitcoin can go to 250 long term, but we have to liquidate some Bitcoin treasury companies first. right? We have to have something bearish to say at the hedge fund cocktail party. And my attitude is, I'm going to wear my antivirus shirt to the hedge fund cocktail party. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Because I know you're going to wake up one day and everyone's going to go, wow, this was all here. It's what happened in 2024, right? At the end of 2023, it just looked like the abyss. It was the opposite of this. It just wouldn't move. It was dead. And everyone thinks that that's what's going to happen to altcoins right up until tokenization starts. So Grayscale's talking about Link, ETH, Solana, internet capital markets. God bless them. Hope they beat the lawsuit. And they've got my personal favorite tokenization project, Avalanche, on there. And we were talking about tokenized assets, small caps, something that I was a big fan of back in the day. And I hope that those guys finally make it. I mean, you want to talk about a bunch of guys? This is Polymath, now Polymesh. Oh my God, these guys have been trying to get the stock market on chain literally for 8 years. They came out in 2017 and broke Telegram, right? Everyone was like, oh my God, it's all coming on chain. 8 years later, here we are, right? And you know what? That kind of makes sense. You know, they built the internet in 2000 and didn't really start monetizing it until the iPhone came out in 2010. Seriously. And then, you know, and then social media came out after that. Right around that, it took them about 8 to 10 years to monetize the internet. Now, in this particular case, I saw something comparing 2000 to today. It is not going to take them 10 years to monetize whatever they put into AI when, you know, when agents and robots hit the ground running next year, which is also why I think it's just completely stupid to completely give up on crypto. It's insane. I mean, I understand why people are selling, but, you know, you turn this thing to January 1. As soon as it becomes January 1 in Asia time and everyone's books clear and all this market maker puking ends, Tau, Near, Render, artificial superintelligence token, Worldcoin. God, you know, some people put Worldcoin in with Bitcoin as like a form of money. I would rather do XRP, but, you know, hey, I can handle being outside the box with Worldcoin if we can drop this whole thing that, you know, we've got to liquidate all the Bitcoin treasury companies. In other words, no one's allowed to hedge against the dollar. No one's allowed to speculate. No one's allowed to be long. You know, nobody that didn't come from the Wharton School of Business can make any money in Bitcoin, right? You have to be one of us. Can't have Tom Lee, right? And, you know, the imitators coming out and, oh, we definitely got to get Michael Saylor. You know, there's all those people out. You know, God only knows what they're going to do to that stock at the end of the year. Good. You know, let them have their fun, because when all of this forced selling stops, all the narrative creation around the forced selling. In other words, we're all being abstract in the wrong way. We're supposed to be inventing a narrative about how valuations and how markets will change next year dramatically, not retrofitting an explanation to what happened to our bag, as unfortunate as that is, right? It's the wrong use of your imagination. Now, speaking of no imagination, can someone tell me why no one likes Sui or Near? Like, I saw a graphic about the transaction throughput on Sui and what that's actually capable of doing, especially with Solana having an issue. I'm like, wow. I mean, I understand Sui is highly speculative, so it'll do awesome in the bull market and get destroyed in the bear market, per what Raoul Paul says, because he's a big Sui guy. But wow, are we really gonna like leave that below $1.50 with the throughput that it's got there? Because Grayscale's like, hey man, you know, you might want to take a look at that. This is nothing we haven't said. right? You might want to look at Monad, this like new layer one. Toby was hot to trot all year for anything that was new, any new layer ones. Okay, well, you got one. You got Monad and you got Sui. It's not brand new, but and to be even more outside the box, everybody wants to focus on sustainable revenue. Like, who can actually make money in crypto? Well, you can make money with ETH because the fees are high, right? Hyperliquid makes money. We know that. Pump.fun and Launchpads can make money. I don't know how. I think that's Grayscale's version of being outside the box, is to talk about, Pump.fun and things like that. Okay. It's just in a list. Grayscale is also telling you that, this whole quantum computing thing. Let me just tell you about quantum computing for everybody who has to have a risk for next year. Quantum computing can affect cryptography and affect crypto and Bitcoin, but they're going to go after the Swift network first, right? It's like, oh yeah, let's use the quantum computer to get everyone's Bitcoin. They can also use the quantum computer to get into your bank account that has a 4-digit PIN. So, okay, investment banking research reports always have to have a risk to the view, and that's fine. I'd rather have to have them address quantum computing than just come up with some randomly bearish thing that says, oh, well, you know what? Someone's got to get liquidated. Okay, well, maybe someone will get liquidated, and maybe it's the shorts, or maybe it's somebody in a bond market, or maybe it's a metals exchange. Everybody thinks they know what's going to happen. I mean, silver is a pretty big hint, but I don't think people have put it together as to what happens if people don't get the silver that they want and what that means for trust. And this thing about privacy, like, did you notice on student loans that they're now going into your bank account to get the money? Now, you know what that's about, right? I don't know if that's about the people whose wages that they're garnishing, or whether they're literally trying to scare people away from going to college. Like, it feels like they're trying to make the point that if you go to college and you can't pay back the money, that we're coming into your bank, we're coming into your check, assuming you have a check. Very interesting way of Uncle Sugar putting pressure on educational institutions. Now, of course, there's also the obvious thing that they're in your bank account regardless of the reason, and if you're living in existence of dissatisfaction, of emptiness, of longing, this sense of longing is really your loss of freedom, and it's freedom for which you yearn. And if you have none in this government or any government, which started out being for freedom and for the people, or they started out as our servants, well, you've undoubtedly taken a look at that and woken up to your reality. And that is what you're feeling. And if you wake up a little bit more, you can do something about it. Those are the words of John McAfee. John McAfee. Like, I sacrificed my Twitter account for antivirus and John McAfee because, other than 1 or 2 live streams a week ago, I can't get anywhere on Twitter, and I don't care. I don't care. Because at the end of the day, McAfee's going to be right. At the end of the day, the antivirus project is going to be right for having facial recognition clothing on their website so they can't see you, along with 62 other things, and the history of John McAfee, and the history of the Samurai wallet, and like a giant privacy library, for God's sakes, along with the privacy coin coming. It's less of a shill for them, even though I love them. It's more of a statement about what's happening with altcoins and people who think that this is some kind of victory for Bitcoin over altcoins, or it's the end of the cycle, or it's some other old narrative like it's 2018, or whatever is the latest engagement farming BS of the day. Right? I prefer things like the Gann 100-year cycle. Gann wrote a famous book. The character began his adventure in inventing in 1926, 100 years ago. Patreon Platinum has the full details as to what I would expect for next year based on William Gann's encoded novel. Needless to say, all these people who are like, well, I don't think we can predict it. I make $750,000 a year, but I can't make a prediction. We charge $49 a month. And believe me, Toby can make a prediction, right? And so can I, which is what we do in Patreon. You know, we can make predictions. You know, we can read the Gann tea leaves. You know, we got more research than anybody knows what to do with, to be honest. And you know what it all adds up to? Don't get in this market's way when it starts to go up next year, right? Somebody commenting from Twitch. Oh my God, we're on Twitch. Sir, welcome. Welcoming everybody from TikTok. Everybody from TikTok is off in 20 minutes. They're probably already off, but we're still going to welcome you anyway, right? So yes, we are seeing the chats from Twitch, and we appreciate you watching. Definitely. The End Zone Come says Near and Propy are my biggest holdings. You know, tokenized residential real estate. I saw a TikTok about, you know, real estate in Tennessee falling in 20% increments. That's just a freight train to the downside. You know why? Oops. You know why? Because when mortgage rates come down, the housing market is unlocking. Housing prices haven't been able to fall. You can't fix housing affordability because housing wasn't trading at all. They had to cut rates to get housing functioning so you can have buyers meet sellers at an agreed upon price, which is undoubtedly going to be a lot lower than where it is right now. You know, and that's going to continue. And then if there happens to be a full-time job shock, the Black Swan that nobody talks about for next year is a possible precipitous decline in housing. I mean, not necessarily a 2008 where, you know, banks get nuked, because I don't think the Fed's ever going to allow that. Right? I mean, if that hasn't happened by now, it's probably not going to happen because they're already doing QE. Another thing that the market is painfully oblivious to. But this whole idea of, yeah, let's sell our Bitcoin and buy a house, and Bitcoin has nowhere to go but up, and the house has nowhere to go but down. You want to talk about a pain trade? I mean, that's a pain trade for 2026. Why? Because you need to think abstractly, right? You want to hear something insane? Here's something insane. Altcoins, certain altcoins are better than a house in terms of investment value over, say, the next 2 years. You can buy the future, or you can buy somebody's housing bag and watch it go down 40% in an orderly way over, say, a next year or two. Like, ask yourself, where's housing going to be at the end of 2027 if you have an anticipated labor market disruption and ongoing rate cuts with QE? Like, what do you think it is they're going to need to do the QE for? To save the banks from whatever. Why? So the banks can buy the government debt. I don't know if you know this, but, you know, government debt is done by auctions. The government is not guaranteed a successful bond auction, by the way. It's not a given that they just say, oh, yeah, okay, you guys have to take all this. I mean, yeah, it's a good idea if primary dealers come in and, bid aggressively to make sure the auctions are orderly, because their customers will lose their mind if a bond auction ever fails, and everyone assumes that that can't happen. Right up until this thing with the Bank of Japan, and that nightmare at the Bank of Japan just continues. And of course, the real thing that you want to think about for 2026 is, now that everybody knows about the Bank of Japan, because everybody was an expert on that on Twitter a week ago, is where else can that happen? Can that go on in England? I mean, did you know we're coming up on the 250th anniversary of America? For the 50-year Gann cycle in 1976, that was the bicentennial 200-year anniversary of America. Do you know we had a currency crisis in England? Now, I don't wish a currency crisis on anybody, but we're all selling Bitcoin. We're all puking Bitcoin Christmas Eve morning in Europe. Like, I don't know, like it all had cooties. Like, we got to just get rid of it. I can't stand it anymore. On Christmas Eve, the negativity on Christmas Eve in crypto, we have lost our mind. We are the beacon of freedom. Like, we are the flag for humanity. We are the ultimate abstraction. We are the ultimate rebellion against the Excel spreadsheet. You want to forecast something? Yeah, okay. Well, put your John McAfee sweatshirt on and go forecast this. Because I'm not selling Bitcoin at 86. And a lot of people think that it's going to wind up printing 70. I suppose if you just look at plain Jane charts, all the charts are broken, right? Everything's broken. Then again, you have Grayscale saying, watch out for Lido and JTO, because staking will become the norm. Like, no one will buy those coins just to buy those coins. They will buy those coins to stake them. You will have interest rates in crypto. Money will have an interest rate. And if you look at the Bitcoin LuxAlgo chart, even though it's all broken, right? Look down here, man. This is the Bitcoin 4-hour chart. Interesting that all they do is sell, yet you have this monstrous green on green money flow into Bitcoin. Now, who knows? That could be forced sellers meeting new whale buyers. That's possible. Or you could have new whale buyers or somebody in there aggressively buying spot. I think they're going to buy the dip in Monero. They're buying the dip in Zcash right now. So, I got a great idea. Go get some money together and go buy your girl a Christmas present. Go sit by the tree. Stop looking at your phone. Don't look at it. And have a Merry Christmas. And remember, you were so euphoric at this time last year that there is absolutely no way you could have imagined what is going on right now. Like when the orange man sold over the top of everybody with his meme coin, it's going to be pretty funny next year when he comes groveling back to the crypto market, back to the crypto bros, looking for midterm election votes. And we're going to ask for the Clarity Act, the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. And you know what? We're going to get it or they're going to lose. Period. End of story. And they're going to make whatever deal they have to make. So yes, the charts are broken. Last year, the charts were phenomenal. And the market went down all year. And altcoins got vaporized in Q4. I'm thinking 2026 is the inverse, with 2 Black Swan events to add some spice to it. But if you want to be a big boy trader, next year is about abstraction, imagination, being able to move fast tactically. If you let this thing get in your head now, You may not be ready for next year, which is why call your girl, find a Christmas tree, get a present, have a drink, eat some turkey, and enjoy your life. Touch grass, touch snow. I know it's bad, but bad is good. Last year, good was bad. Andy, welcome. Why is there so much XRP hate? Well, dude, because everyone's got to hate something these days. You know, that's just what they do on YouTube. You know, if XRP was at $3, they'd be in love with it. XRP fell below $2, and now no one likes it. It's crazy. It's crazy. You remember the American-made cryptos? I don't care who's in office. They're going to have to make crypto an industry. You know, AI is going to take jobs away. Crypto can add jobs. I'm wondering when someone's going to figure this out. Honestly, I'm wondering when. It's like, hey, wow, we could have a crypto industry. Somebody will figure it out. Who knows? It could be on the left. Scary thought. MJ Hits, first on the stream. Hal Lopez, Merry Christmas, sir, in Portugal. Warmon, GF. Bull Runner is here. Rock Lobster, Felix, Merry Christmas. Rave Song Records, believes in crypto and Santa. Robin Wyckoff, a #1 consumer of our content, right? Welcome. If you took Bitcoin or gold and silver to a farmer, which one would he take? I think he would take the gold and silver, right? Yav, good morning. Chad, the end to come. RNR, Odd Dark, a member, banging away with those emojis. Merry Christmas to you, sir. Andy, everybody on Twitch, soon to be, I think we're going to go to LinkedIn and Facebook next, if you can believe that. How does Doge look? I can look at Doge, but I tell you, the guy who missed out with Doge was Elon. I mean, I really did think that Elon was going to make some kind of move to have, you know, something like Doge be an active cryptocurrency connected to Tesla. But, you know, I guess that was a part of, you know, a medicine event that didn't go right. Guess we're not doing that. You know, the redeeming value in Doge is it can be money. I mean, right now it trades terrible like everything else, right? Every time they drop this market, LuxAlgo inserts resistance above it. And, you know, the general puking that's been going on the daily charts on all these altcoins, Doge in particular, Doge has been red on red now since Thanksgiving. It's just a complete liquidation event. It's like a slow motion FTX. I have no idea what these characters are going to do at the end of the year. I'm just like, let's think abstractly. Let's be valuation agnostic, meaning, you know, if something is worth 3 trillion, it could be worth 5. That's Bitcoin. Valuation agnostic, meaning if you have a crypto project that's worth 25 million, and not only could be cheap, it could be super cheap, right? Like everybody wants to buy the coin at 750,000 market cap. Of course, that's wonderful if it works out, but a 10 million or a 25 or even a $75 million DPIN project may wind up a 10x, a 20x, or a 100x. The best time to talk about 100x is on Christmas Eve when it's falling apart. That is the market update for today. Merry Christmas. We will be back after the holiday.